Today's video is brought to you by Assiniboia Downs Gaming and Event Center. And be sure to tune in to Trust the Profits Live Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern for Monday Night Lights, hosted by Matthew DeSantis.
Salutations and welcome, friends, to another Trust the Profits Belmont Stakes Spotlight Series. My name is Matthew DeSantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle @FailDeMenace. I'm joined, as always, by my compatriot, El Hombre, as we talk through some of the main contenders for the 2023 Belmont Stakes. And this one is, of course, on Tapit Trice. Now, before we get to that, make sure to press that subscribe button here on YouTube. We got a lot of great content for you, whether it's live betting on Monday nights at Assiniboia, whether it's live betting at the Cocktail Lounge on Thursday nights, handicapping videos, graded stakes previews, capping the card, daily doubling down, the win play show. We got a ton of content for you here on the channel. Additionally, make sure to like this video, comment below with what you give Tapit Trice percentages of winning this year's Belmont Stakes. Would love to hear your take, because this is a horse I think a lot of us are very intrigued by in this particular race. El Hombre, how are we doing today? And this was a horse you really liked in the Kentucky Derby, and I know there's a horse you just liked in general quite a bit, and I think this is a race that he maybe was made for.
Yeah, he's a gorgeous horse, no doubt. And you're right. I've been on him all season. Had a relatively disappointing Kentucky Derby. Stumbled out of the gate like he's, kind of been his Achilles heel his whole career so far. But I'm going to tell you here, first of all, I believe there's 10 horses in the gate. Mm-hmm. You can put a line through 5 of them instantly. And there are 5, in my opinion, there's 5 horses that are going to take some money here. Tapit Trice being, I don't know, second or third choice probably at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. But I really like Tapit Trice here. And like you said, this is a race that was built for him. The distance has never been a bother. It kind of gives him some time to recover from a stumble out of the gate, for example. I really like him here. I've been on him all year. Why stop now?
I hear you. And, he's a horse that I was not necessarily the biggest fan of in the Kentucky Derby because of those aforementioned gate issues that you talked about. But he is a horse that I think a lot of people are going to gravitate to for the Belmont Stakes for a variety of different reasons. You see here, obviously, 4 wins and 6 career starts. He does have that 7th place finish recently in the Kentucky Derby. But listen, from a pedigree standpoint, he makes sense. You got to tap it up top, right? That has been a winning formula at the Belmont. 4 of the last 9 winners, the last 9 times this race has been run at 1.5 miles, were sired by Tapit. So you have to like that pedigree. Additionally, he's going from that Derby, skipping the Preakness, going to the Belmont move. That's also been quite successful. 5 of the last 9 winners have done that move as well. So there's a lot of things working in his benefit, I think. And it's a smaller field. So you mentioned getting off to that slow start. Only 9 other horses to contend with is a lot easier than 19 other horses to contend with.
Yeah, I don't think a stumble. I mean, within reason. We don't want to go to our knees and do what he did in the what was it? I can't remember what prep.
Yeah,
it was.
The Tampa Bay Derby. Yeah,
Tampa Bay. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, Tampa Bay Derby, where he went down and got so far behind that it was astronomical that he came back. He did win that race, but he can't get away with that here. That it's too good of a field. But he can get away with an average start, I think. And, as long as he gets out fairly clean, this is going to be a classic, guys. Because, Angel of Empire to me was the best horse in the Kentucky Derby on that day. Came a little late. Obviously, Mage was the best horse. Mage won. So I don't mean to disrespect that effort. But Angel of Empire, I feel like tactically a little bit different. Could have been the winner that day. And I loved Angel of Empire then. Love him now. And then you got Forte, who, outside of that late scratch on Derby Day, has been nothing but the elite class of the field, class of this crop, really. Mm-hmm. And then you got National Treasure coming off a Preakness win, which I don't believe in. I never have believed in. I'm interested to hear what you think on National Treasure. But first of all, I think Tapit Trice, it really does come down to how he gets out of the gate. But as long as that's not a natural disaster,
yeah,
I feel like he's going to be on the board and he could win. Now, I'm a little bit concerned with, I think Angel of Empire and Forte all kind of gunning for the same race tactically. I don't know. I think that they're all great. Those are the 3 best horses of this crop, in my opinion. And for those three to kind of be similar on the way they might approach this race, that's concerning. But I think that Tapit Trice might be I don't know. It's close between Angel of Empire, Forte, and Tapit Trice on how these odds are really going to work out.
Yeah. Now, that's one of the things you never know how odds are going to play out. I just saw David Aragona having a discussion with Nick Tamaro. Both guys are morning line makers. David, one of the best, making the morning lines up in New York for Naira. And they were talking about, the fact that the Preakness winner usually doesn't get a lot of respect in the Belmont. And so, National Treasure probably isn't going to really get a ton of money. So it is going to be, I think, between Angel of Empire, Tapit Trice, and Forte as your post-time favorites.
Yeah.
You're right. They all do run very similar styles. And I think Tapit Trice, some people think he's a dead closer. He's really not. It's because of what you mentioned. He's a horse that just gets off to these atrocious starts and kind of has to close.
Yeah, he's got no choice.
That's not his natural. I mean, all you have to do is look at that bluegrass and understand that's really his running style, which is to get out there, be mid-pack, and be, most importantly, in the clear. That's pretty obvious that that's his one bugaboo, that if he gets trapped inside, if he's getting a lot of kickback, if he's around a ton of other horses, seems like maybe he doesn't like that. Saez does a lot to make sure this horse is always on the outside. Remember, in that Bluegrass Stakes, he broke from the number one post position and yet angled out wide to go 3-4 wide down the backstretch because he knew this horse can handle the distance. Now, you start going 3-4 wide around those huge sweeping turns at the Belmont, that might be a little too much, but this is a horse. I know I talked a little bit with Jessica Tugwell, our pedigree expert here on Trust the Profits, about this. And, I do think Tapit Trice is a little bit different than a horse like Red Route 1. I think Red Route 1 is a pace-dependent horse. I think a lot of people mistaken a horse coming running late as a horse that just needs more and more distance. I don't think that's the case with Red Route 1. He just comes late, and that's his running style, and he needs to run into pace. Tapit Trice doesn't need to run into pace. It can be slow up front, and he's going to be able to just run because he's got the class. And he's just such a naturally talented horse that, I think he's a huge win threat here. As much as I was against him in the Kentucky Derby, I see him as a really strong win threat in this particular race. And I think you're right. As long as there's not a natural disaster coming out of the starting gate, it's kind of hard to see him not hitting the board at the very least, because he's going to be able to get the distance based upon everything we've seen.
And by the way, that 7th place finish at the Kentucky Derby sounds a little bit better when you picture the fact that he was a distant 18th out of the gate. I mean, he was dead last.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I remember watching we did a live stream. He wasn't even in the picture. You didn't even hear his name once.
Yeah.
And that was like, by the time it was all over and you gather up all the excitement and figure out, oh, Mage won, Angel of Empire was closing, blah, blah, blah. Where was Tapit Trice? He finished 7th, which, again, not super impressive on paper, but
yeah,
if you rewatch that race when he comes out a distant 18th and still makes, not that 7th is a wonderful thing in the 91 speed figure there, not super impressive, but I mean, he kind of made whiskey out of water there for what it's worth. Yeah. And again, with this field being half the size, hey, I mean, I think given the case that, and I believe this will be true, Angel of Empire, Forte, Tapit Trice are all going to be in that. I mean, you tell me what you think. 5-2 to 4-1 region.
Yeah,
all three of them,
probably right. Yeah.
Which is great. A great betting race, by the way. Just awesome because you got a lot of people are going to like Hit Show at 15-1. Got a lot of people are going to like National Treasure, and then you got the bomb hunters out there, which I don't see it, but I guess if you're going to bomb hunt Hit Shows lively at 15-1, and I think Hit Show is probably going to go off even bigger than that. But I mean, dude, Tapit Trice goes off 4-1. I like him, and I will bet that. I will bet him to win pretty heavily at 4-1 because I think if he gets his race, and like we've said it 3 times now, no natural disasters in the gate, he's going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. You mentioned that Derby performance. I think there's a couple of things to say about the Kentucky Derby. It is both the most prestigious race in the world, and it is the race, or at least in North America, and it is the race that I think the most amount of people will point to and go, well, Mage won the Kentucky Derby. Therefore, Mage is the best horse in the country. Our good friend Ed DeRosa over at Horse Racing Nation holds that opinion. If you win the Kentucky Derby, you're the best horse. And he held that opinion, God bless him, for a really long time with Rich Strike until it just became untenable last year. But the bottom line is, you know, as prestigious as the Kentucky Derby is, it's also, from a handicapping standpoint, one of the quickest lines you can draw through a horse's past performances, because you go, it's the Derby. Crazy stuff happens. You mentioned you get off to a slow start. You're 18th by a mile. You know, the horse that it's so funny because you really liked Tapit Trice. I really liked Derma, and they had almost the exact same trip and finished right next to each other in the Kentucky Derby. They both had horrendous starts. Derma almost unseated his jockey at the starting gate, and they finished 6th and 7th. And
you just need to take into consideration, Matt, that there's a ton of luck involved in the Derby as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's one of those things. It's kind of like, I mean, if you're a auto racing fan, the Indy 500, the Daytona 500, whatever you're watching, you need to have a little bit of luck. You need to not have somebody put it in the wall in front of you to reference auto racing that takes you out of the race, you know, whatever. You can't control. There's a lot of factors you can't control. A horse jumps out of the gate sideways and takes you out instantly, which happens in a 20-horse field. But yeah, man, I mean, if everything goes correctly, according to Tapit Trice welfare, I think he's got as good of a shot as anybody. I actually like him to win. This race is built for him. He's built for this race.
Yeah.
Bada boom, bada bing.
I think the counter argument, and then I can see it in the comments already, and it's a valid one, is the competition hasn't been overwhelming that he's beaten. You know, verifying. Now, you could say Blazing Sevens came back to run a huge race in the Preakness after skipping the Kentucky Derby, having run against him in the Bluegrass. I mean, that certainly, I think, is maybe a notch in Tapit Trice's belt a little bit, that he did beat a horse that ran so big in the Preakness. But, you know, you look at Tampa Bay Derby, didn't have a whole lot. The allowance optional claimer that he beat Shesterkin, one of his stable mates that hasn't really been that great. It was hyped up maybe a little bit more than he should have been. And so, you know, maybe you go, hey, now he is facing Angel of Empire and Forte and Red Route 1 and National Treasure. As a Tapit Trice fan,
I draw a line. As a Tapit Trice fan, I draw a line through the Tampa Bay Derby, because that was one of those things, like you said. He stumbles out of the gate so bad that he literally had to sprint the whole race, and it was like, is he really going to do this? And that's really when I became a fan, because he granted, not a great field.
Yeah.
But he recovered from a natural disaster, which he won't get away with here. But I love Tapit Trice here. I don't know, Matt. Are you going to bet? Are you putting him on the board? Are you willing to bet him to win?
I'm totally putting him on the board. Yes. And I like you. I want to see what the odds look like, I think, the day of, in terms of whether or not I'm going to use him as a win bet candidate. I think that there's a certain price at which he becomes very, very appealing.
What is that? What is that price?
For me, it's I'd say 4 to 1 or higher, kind of like you. I mean, I think that's kind of where I start to go, okay, that's intriguing.
I think 7 to 2 is it for me.
So yeah, but he's listen, if you believe in the trends that we talk about in the Belmont, the pedigree, the layoff, these types of things, this is a horse that is set up to win this race. And we haven't even mentioned his Hall of Fame trainer, Todd Pletcher, who's as good as anybody at getting horses ready to win the Belmont. Now, he's got another very good one that we're going to talk about in this Spotlight series as well with Forte. But Tapit Trice, I think you and I are in agreement. Huge threat to win the Belmont Stakes for sure. And definitely a foolish horse to leave off your tickets in some capacity, because I have a hard time seeing him missing the board in this particular race. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Spotlight series on Tapit Trice. El Hombre, thanks so much for joining me. And for all of you out there, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to press that subscribe button and press the like button as well. Let us know where you put Tapit Trice in your rankings for the 2023 Belmont Stakes. For El Hombre, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.